Yo, what's up? How's it going? It's the boy Don Swace in the morning, even depending on where you are right now or when. And today I'm coming at you with a new video. It's going to be What a Kushina Exam Part 3. Now, I know I said that I was going to be able to make any videos for like a week, like 3 days ago when I made What If I Would Have the Sharingan, which that also is in the works. I've been working on this and that, and What If Naruto and Sasuke, What If Naruto killed Sasuke all at the same time. So yeah, but it looks like an opportunity presented itself. I was able to make the script, so without further ado, of course I'm able to make the script, but I was able to make the video. So yeah, without further ado, let's go. After the Land of Waves mission, Team 7 along with Zabuza and Haku went back to the Leaf. When they got there, Kakashi and Naruto explained the situation, and the Mist Ninja were actually a great help during the building and protecting of the bridge. After pleading their case, Minato decided that he would grant Leaf citizenship to the two. Since Zabuza had already been instated as one, and due to what Team 7 had seen from him, he was once again going to be given the rank of Jonin. As for Haku, while he was extremely strong, Zabuza even saying he was stronger than himself, Haku requested to be considered a genin. This would be because in this timeline, while back on the way to the Leaf, Kakashi would have told everyone the Chunin exams were relatively close. Haku would tell Minato that he had wished to be a genin because after seeing the potential in Team 7, he had wanted to actually try and test himself against the upcoming new generation of ninja. He'd know from Kakashi that normally the exams would be taken as a team, but said he would ask to participate by himself since he didn't have one. Minato said he'd grant Haku's wish, and he'd be an exception. He then said that Zabuza would be put in the Anbu, but after a while should think about teaching Kenjutsu in the academy. And Haku, who actually expressed interest in one day becoming a teacher, was told that he'd first train for the exams, and then after he'd be put in the Anbu, and after a while he could look into being able to teach. Also, a small note, Haku here would be 14 instead of 15. Anyway, they'd all be congratulated on a job well done, and would then start grinding for the Chunin exams. They'd go on less missions during their time waiting for the exam, due to them all being really busy training. Naruto and Sasuke would both ask Kakashi for training, being that Naruto would want to learn more about using lightning style, and Sasuke would because after seeing Naruto using the Rasengan and Kakashi using the Rasen Storm, he'd actually want to learn how to use the Rasen Storm for himself. Kakashi would tell him that jutsu was on a whole nother level than any other jutsu he'd ever seen or used. He did have something else in mind though, so he'd teach him the Chidori instead. Sasuke one day Sasuke would still be training with his family as usual, and one day before he began training though, he would have to look for his dad and brother, and he could hear them from a room, but before he walked in, he thought he could hear some very important talk going on, and decided to listen in. He heard his father saying, "I wanted you to be the first one to know this, but Danzo was recently broken out of jail." When Itachi heard that, he donned a serious look and asked his father if he was serious. Sasuke then walked in and asked, "Who's Danzo?" Fugaku would see him and ask why he was there. He said they were late for training. Itachi apologized, but then told his father that Sasuke did have a right to know. So he explained, Danzo, a former village elder, was the one who proposed the Uchiha massacre plan, a plan that entailed the extermination of our entire clan. The plan was proposed due to talk from the Uchiha insurrection, which may have very well happened if it weren't for Lord Forth's peace negotiations. A big part of which was gifting the Uchiha the 7 tails, of which you are now its Jinchuriki. Anyway, after the plan was stumped, Danzo decided to take matters into his own hands. He attacked Shisui and stole one of his eyes. Shisui was able to survive long enough to find me and tell me what was going on. Tell me that he had been attacked. He gave me a Sharingan and committed suicide to give me my own Mangekyo, not knowing if Danzo had more of the Leaf Ninja or his own Anbu was involved, in order to be able to fight back. After that, I got Lord Force's help, and an investigation was launched. Soon after, more Uchiha started to die. It was found that Danzo was killing Uchiha and stealing their eyes. He was subdued by a team led by none other than the former Lord Third himself, and was put in jail. Now he's gone, and so are the Uchiha that were standing guard by his cell at the time. After that, they told Sasuke what he looked like, and then they all went to train. Speaking of training, Fu would spend her time training with Zabuza and Haku. She would learn how to use more water-style jutsu and to fight with needles. She also, in this allotted time frame, would learn Fireball from Sasuke and would be training with her teammates as much as possible. In terms of social life, Kakashi would introduce Zabuza to the other Jonin, and upon meeting him, Guy would want to spar against Zabuza. Zabuza would end up losing the fight, and from then on, he'd constantly be trying to outdo Guy and Kakashi, sort of inserting himself into the rivalry. Fu would also give Haku a makeover to make him look a little bit more like a dude, but still retain some of his elegance, no homo. And he'd then introduce him to her former classmates. He'd end up catching the eye of Ino, who would develop a crush. During this time, Dry would check in on the Leaf, and the first place he'd check into would be the Namikaze residence. He'd get greeted and would congratulate Naruto on becoming a Genin, and for having a very successful mission that would have been above most Genin's pay grade. He then would be thanked for having Nagato teach him the Rasengan. Though at the mention of that name, Jiraiya switched to a more serious look. Minato could already guess what it was about. I'm guessing you want to talk about Nagato and Yahiko, right? Jiraiya nodded. There hadn't been any word from the two in a while, but the mission for those two should have already been completed. Naruto and Kushina were concerned about what he knew. And asked about what he knew. He told him he wasn't sure about much, and that's why he wanted to investigate what happened, and let Konan accompany him, which was allowed. Her son Kai would be sent to stay with Hiruzen and Konohamaru. That wouldn't be too weird for him, because on occasion when his parents would both be gone from the village at the same time, he'd just stay with Hiruzen or the Namakazes. Kai also would have had his mother's paper Keke Genkai, and he would replace Udon in the Konohamaru trio because, yeah. Speaking of Konohamaru, Speaking of Konohamaru, this incident with the Sand Trio didn't happen because Team 7 would be busy training, and he'd be probably off somewhere playing with Kai and the rest of his group. And I think the only person we haven't gone through their training is Naruto, because of course Haku would still be training with Fu. Naruto would still be doing his thing. He'd be working on all his stuff from already, and he'd also still be working on the seal that he mentioned from last time. And he'd also be training with his team and Hinata sometimes. And so yeah. So as time passed by, the day came, and it was finally time for the Chunin Exams. Team 7 would be accompanied by Haku. As they walked, they'd be approached by Rock Lee. He'd introduce himself like normal, but instead of challenging Sasuke, or at least just challenging Sasuke, he'd challenge him and Naruto at the same time. When they heard that, they snickered, and Sasuke said, "That's a really bad idea, man. There's no way you could take us both on at the same time." Lee just said with a determined tone, "Don't underestimate me. By taking you both on, I'll prove that hard work can surpass being born with talent like you two, being an Uchiha and the son of the fourth." When they heard that, they both got angry. They sped to his side and said, "You think we were born like this?" They kicked him in the back, and Naruto caught up to his front, saying, "We worked hard and trained every day." He then was able to knock Lee back, and Sasuke appeared above him with an axe kick that Lee was able to block, but it still knocked him onto the ground, and he did that while yelling, "Don't insult us, pretending all the bone-crushing work we did to get here never happened." Lee then rolled away and got up and caught his breath. He then apologized for insulting them, accidentally making light of all the work they had gone through to get to where they were, power-wise. He then said, "To to apologize. I'll go all out. Just as he was going to undo his weights, the guy sensei had appeared and scolded Lee as he was about to get unnecessarily serious before the exams had even begun. They then would wind up having one of their moments, and everyone would think it was kind of weird, except for Haku, who would have thought it was sweet that they were having a nice master-student moment. So, they carried on. Sasuke was the first to detect and dispel the genjutsu. They then went inside. When the test began and the students started to realize the true purpose of the test, Sasuke used his Sharingan to check people's hand movements. Haku made a mirror to look at people's tests. Fu put the person she was sitting next to under genjutsu and quickly switched their tests. And Naruto just used his own brains. They'd all also get through the final question, and then Anko would come in and take over. All the teams would then be taken to the Forest of Death, and then they'd be doled out their scrolls. Team 7 would have a Heaven Scroll, and before they went into the forest, they would promise Haku that they would meet up later. The teams would then be off. Naruto still had to take a leak and then went into the bushes. He'd get ambushed, but would take the guy down who tried, and would take his scroll. He'd see it'd be the same one his team already had, but he'd keep it anyway. As the team moved on, a blast of wind was suddenly shot at them. They were able to dodge and look to its source. They then saw a grass ninja, the same one that they saw from earlier before they went into the woods. The grass ninja showed their scroll, revealing it was an earth one, and swallowed it, and told them that they were going to have to fight for their lives if they wanted it. They then bit their thumb and summoned a huge snake. When seeing the summon, the teammates looked at each other and then synced hand signs. They all took in a deep breath and yelled, as well as they could while spitting fire, "Seven's Fireball!" A combination of fireballs that was able to defeat the snake. The grass ninja, who was Orochimaru, was impressed at the Genin's ability to dispose of his snake so quickly and decided to test them himself. So, he jumped down towards them from the branch he was perched on. Fu reacted to this by running in front of her team and yelled, "Hidden Mist Jutsu!" She weaved the hand signs and from her mouth released a thick mist. Orochimaru had already jumped down, leaving Fu right into the mist. Sasuke then thought, "Thanks, Fu. Now it's time to end this." He activated his Sharingan, which was now 2 Tomoe, and he began to use his new jutsu. He was able to see his enemy's chakra and yelled, "Chidori!" He dragged his jutsu to the ground, and before he could make contact though, Orochimaru summoned another snake, and then he had it slither around him, so he would be protected from the attack. He then jumped on top of the snake, and then jumped again. He was planning on using a fire jutsu while Fu was trying to clear her smoke, or other mist. But before he could finish weaving hand signs, a needle pierced his hand. He looked over, and so did Team 7, and they could see through the clearing mist. It was Haku. He jumped off a tree to the front of Orochimaru and said, "Stay away from my friends." He weaved some hand signs and used one of his new ice jutsu that he developed. Cold air began to form around him, and he was able to create ice shards around him and sent them flying towards the snake. "Flying ice shards!" he yelled. Even in midair though, the ice was avoided. Seeing that jutsu though, Orochimaru would have most likely known about the Yuki clan, and he could tell that the one he was fighting was a part of that clan. Haku then blasted himself towards a tree with a wind jutsu and clung to it. He was able to stick a mirror to the tree and went inside and jetted out towards Orochimaru. He was too fast to evade, and then he was able to get a kunai out and stab Orochimaru. When Team 7 saw this, they cheered out, glad he beat him. But as they did, Orochimaru used his weird throwing himself up substitution, and he was able to throw himself up. But before he decided to retreat, he decided that just because he couldn't get Sasuke, who he originally wanted, there were other good candidates for a curse mark. So, as he threw himself up, he also extended his neck and bit Haku on his, and then proceeded to dart towards the inner woods. Haku tried to catch himself, but felt a lot of pain from where he was bitten and lost concentration, causing him to fall. When he saw that, Naruto tossed a flying Raishin kunai below where his friend was, teleported it, and then was able to catch him while he was falling. He then reconvened with the rest of his team, and they went to somewhere they could rest and look after Haku. After they found a good spot, they'd ask Haku what was wrong, and he'd show them the curse mark he had received. It was the Earth Mark, as Haku had somewhat reminded of Orochimaru of Kimimaru, a talented young boy with a special Kekkei Genkai that was feared even within their clan, a clan that had been wiped out. He had also had a similar look in his eyes, but it was somewhat different. The reason the look was different is because Haku was changing from how he was before. He was beginning to make new friends and get a new home, and have other things to live for. Right now though, he had to focus on living through the initial bite. As the three would care for Haku, that's when the three sound ninja, Dosu, Zaku, and Ken, would immediately pounce after finding them. They would have heard about Haku from passing their boss in the forest, and their directive would be to capture him and Sasuke. Dosu would tell them that they were going to take, or rather, I don't think it was, whatever, they'd be capturing, But yeah, Dosu would tell them that they were going to be taking Haku and Sasuke, and not to stand in their way. As Sasuke and Fu were about to get up, Naruto motioned them to stay back. He then confronted the three and asked, "This may be a wild guess, but the guy pulling strings, is it Orochimaru?" The sound ninja were shocked that Naruto could just guess that, and his team was confused. He said he'd explain it to them later, but said that he was able to figure it out that it was Orochimaru because of what he was told by the snake's former teammate and Naruto's godfather, Jiraiya, had told him. The use of snake summons, his way of fighting, and an affiliation with the mysterious village that made a sound was what clued him in. Zaku then stepped in and told him, "No matter what you think you know, I'll destroy you and your team." Naruto stretched out and said that the reason he wanted to fight these guys on his own was because that if they work for a Sannin, or at least the former Sannin, they had to be at least pretty strong, and he had something he really wanted to test during the forest, death. He wanted to use it on Orochimaru, but he didn't get the chance, and now was as good a time as any, as he didn't even feel the need to hold back on these guys. He told Sasuke specifically to watch closely. He then dove into his subconscious and confronted Kurama. "What do you want, brat?" he said. He got a responsive, "I don't know why you're getting so annoyed. This will benefit both of us." He then placed his hand on his seal, which would have been better than the original with more time for Kushina and Minato to tweak it, and it went onto his hand, and he then placed it on his forehead. The seal then roughly formed on Kurama's head, though it was sort of wavy and it looked and moved kind of like a flame. He then told the fox, "If you choose to accept this seal, then you'll take over my body for 1 minute. You won't be able to transform into your true form, or go into full power, or access all of your power, but you'll still be able to access lots of it. What do you say?" Kurama smirked and asked, "What's to stop me from killing your friends, or even you?" "I'll just have to trust you." He then raised his fist up, and Kurama grinned once again, saying, "Fine, I'll accept." Bumping Naruto's fist, and the seal on his forehead turned into like actual solid markings. Naruto's body then opened its eyes, but they were red and slit-like. His teeth were fangs, his fingernails were claws, whiskers frazzled, and he all around had a more powerful and terrifying presence. He then spoke, and it was as if two voices were overlapping when he said, 1 minute starts now. Sasuke and Chome realized that it was Naruto and Kurama's voices. Kurama rushed over at the ever-cocky Zaku, and before he could even try to shoot a sound blast, he was socked in the face and slammed to the ground. He's fast, Dosu thought. He then tried to attack while Kurama wasn't expecting it, but his punch was caught. He was fine with that though. He tried to generate sound with his special gauntlets, and tried to use it to knock his opponents out from the pain of attacking the inner ear. When Kurama began to hear the noise though, he just roared as loud as he could, overpowering the sound from the gauntlet. As Dosu then began to lose balance, he wound up being thrown against the trunk of a tree. Kurama then thought, I wonder if I can try and imitate that jutsu the fourth and the brat use. He then started directing his red chakra into the palm of his hand, and was beginning to seemingly run rampant in his hand. This'll do, he thought. He then sped towards Dosu and slammed the attack into him while yelling, Disaster Bomb! When he slammed the attack into him though, it not only damaged Dosu, but made a hole in the tree. Kin saw this and decided it wasn't worth it and ran. Kurama turned around and walked over to where Zaku was and kicked him a few more times to make sure he wouldn't get up. He then sniffed out where the girl was going. As Kin fled, she felt a shiver down her spine and looked behind her. As she began to turn, she heard a roar, and what she saw wasn't a boy, but what she saw, she could have sworn it was the nine-tailed demon fox himself. A roar was then let out that was so powerful it was able to create sound pressure, and it went at her like a beam, I guess you could say. And when it hit her, she fell unconscious and then fell toward the ground. Orochimaru's whole team of sound ninja had been defeated in less than 1 minute. As Kurama was about to make an arm of chakra to cling to a tree, his time ran out, and Naruto took back over. He started falling to the ground, not being able to move since he wasn't that used to the seal and had to recover from the power used in his body. Before he could hit the ground though, Sasuke flew in and caught him, and then they flew to where the rest were. As a side note, Team 8 was still watching, but after seeing Naruto go beast mode, they just hurried away, and Lee wouldn't be here since the sound ninja didn't think 3 on-guard ninja would fall for a paper bomb on a squirrel. So, after their flight, at this point Haku would have woken up, and Naruto would have been able to stop the spreading of the mark and contain it a little with his knowledge of seals, but said it wouldn't last long being that he didn't have much chakra left. They decided to take a short rest, and both Sasuke and Chome, the Seven Tails, were confused, but definitely felt like Kurama had taken over. Naruto explained that he had been developing his own seal that involved Kurama's consciousness taking over the body for 1 minute, allowing him to bring out a lot of his chakra but not all of it. He said that he wanted to test it out during the exams, and since he didn't really care about hurting the sound in too bad, then it was a good opportunity. He said he did want to work on it so that more power could be used, and also test it on Sasuke, but warned him in the future that they would probably have to be supervised while training with it, so that nothing happened during the process of sort of body swapping or like the switching of consciousness, controlling the body, and that after getting used to it, they should just keep it for emergencies like when they're almost beat or if they're short on chakra. So after a short rest, the examinees decided that they needed to shake a leg, and when they asked Haku what scroll he had, it was an earth. So, Naruto gave him the heaven scroll that he took from the guy that ambushed him earlier, and then they checked the sound ninja, and they saw that they had an earth scroll. That they had everything they needed to pass, and then they headed to the tower. When they got there, they opened their scrolls and were greeted by 2 Jonin. I'd say Iruka and I guess some other random Jonin instructor or something, or like teacher. Whatever. Basically, they'd be congratulated, they'd be told the message that was written on the wall and about the scrolls. And all in all, they'd be congratulated and told that they had passed and were going on to the next round of the Chunin exams. Alright, so that's going to be the end of the video today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, and if you like my videos, subscribe. Also, be sure to share my videos to give your boy some of that YouTube fame and clout. And, yeah. So, the next two videos that are going to come out should be, what if Deku had the Sharingan 4.5 is going to be me rewriting it so that I'll add the, storyline of Aizawa with Sharingan, and they'll tweak the USJ out, the backstory and all that, and then I also going, and yeah, of course, of Naruto killed Sasuke during part 1, part 6. So yeah, be hyped for those, and with that, it's gonna be Don Soicing out. Later.